Hans Von Spakovsky, thanks for joining us again on the All Night Show.
Good,
It's been a
good
while.
to see you again. How's it?
We always appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. One of the primary issues, and certainly one that President Trump talked about a lot when he was a candidate, is the issue of illegal immigration. We still now have the whole contention about building a wall, and here at CPAC where we are, that's a very popular notion. It got, I think, a standing ovation earlier when the Vice President mentioned it. You've been looking at the issue. What would you tell us, or what should we be focusing on as citizens in this debate?
Well, look, the president's been talking not just about illegal immigration, but our legal immigration system and how to change that too. He wants to go to a system where we actually take a look at, for example, the education, skill, financial backgrounds of immigrants. I think that's actually a good system. That's the kind of system places like Australia have. But look, if we're going to do a debate, and we're in the midst of a big debate about this issue, we should have accurate information about how many non-citizens are in the country. And that's why I recently wrote a piece about how they need to add a citizenship question back to the census. We have a census in 2020. It's just 2 years away. And we used to ask that question until the 2010 census. And then some progressive, liberal advocacy groups worked to try to take that question off. They didn't want it on there, and obviously we should return it because we want the most accurate data we have when we're debating issues like immigration and when we're making decisions about things like how we distribute federal funding, a lot of which depends on census data.
We heard just as early as December they were talking about the DACA people, and the number was 800,000. Then the president was more recently saying he would go with 1.8 million. You had mentioned we don't know the numbers. Where are these numbers coming from, and does anyone actually have a real number?
Well, the number of illegal aliens, a lot of that is guesswork. Department of Homeland Security, their estimates range from 10 to 12 million. There are some groups that think it's higher. Right now, there are 690,000 individuals who are qualified under the DACA program. Remember, that was the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. The president has talked about expanding that to 1.8 million. It's not clear how he's going to do it, but what it may be is, remember, the DACA program, you could qualify if you got to the U.S. up until your 16th birthday. And Democrats, for example, in the Senate are talking about expanding that to the age of 18. So if you get to the U.S. before the age of 18, you would qualify under the program. And that would bring up anywhere from 1.8 to some estimates, perhaps as many as 3 million aliens. And I got to tell you, I don't think amnesty is a good idea. It will act as a magnet to bring even more illegal aliens into the country.
And what is your thought? The wall is a contentious issue. Have you given thought to that? Is that something that would work in your estimation?
Well, look, people talk about the wall, but what they really mean is having a secure border. And what that means is that in places where a wall would be effective, San Diego, for example, where you have just flat terrain, it's very easy to get from Mexico in the United States, having a wall along with surveillance and regular patrols by the Border Patrol could help vastly stem the tide. You might not need an actual wall in more remote areas along the border. There are areas, mountainous areas, where it's very tough to get through. You might not need as physical a barrier, but you've got to have security all along the border, and it would depend on the geography of each mile of the border. And could that be effective? Yeah, if walls weren't effective, there wouldn't be one around the White House. And there are many other examples like that.
We often say it's not about immigration, it's about illegal immigration.
Yeah.
And people will, on the other hand, also complain that our legal immigration system is just vastly too long and too expensive. Do they have a point? And if so, do you have any thoughts on what we can do to reform it?
Look, I agree with that, but people should keep in mind that we take in almost 1 million legal immigrants a year. There's a very large number. And that situation is complicated by the fact that we have what we call a chain migration system. A newly naturalized citizen can sponsor not just his immediate family. And nobody disagrees. If you become a citizen, of course you should be able to sponsor your wife and your minor children. But that's not the system we have now. You know, the system we have now extends far beyond that immediate family, and processing those applications takes a huge amount of time. Right now there's a waiting list of 4 million. 4 million aliens who've been sponsored by other citizens to get into the country. And that's a problem that does need to be fixed.
So should we expect anything to happen? This has been an issue that some people have spent their career on, and you know, Ronald Reagan 35 years ago was dealing with this, and here we are in 2018.
Right.
Is there anything different going to happen because the presidency of Donald Trump, or is we just going to get more talk and standoff?
Look, the president offered Democrats a pretty darn good deal. He said, look, give me funding for a secure border, end chain migration, and the visa diversity lottery program, allow me to go after sanctuary cities, and in exchange, I will give you amnesty and citizenship for 1.8 million illegal aliens. Democrats turned that down. They want the amnesty and the citizenship, but they're not willing to provide any of the other kind of security that the president is looking for. Unless Democrats are willing to compromise on that, we were not going to get a deal.
What can be done, if anything, with the number of illegal immigrants that are now in the country?
Well, in addition to what the president has told DHS to do, which is enforce the law, you could cause very large numbers of illegal aliens to self-deport if Congress made the EVerify system mandatory. EVerify is a system that employers can use to check and make sure that somebody they're hiring is actually a U.S. citizen or a legal non-citizen who's allowed to work. And then second, actually have the Justice Department enforce federal law which punishes employers who knowingly and intentionally hire illegal aliens. This would cause large numbers of illegal aliens to self-deport. Why? Because if you can dry up the job market, the ability of illegal aliens to earn money, which they remit back to their home countries, if they can't find work anymore, they're going to go home. And that would be a way of, I think, substantially reducing the number of illegal aliens inside the country.
Hans Von Spakovsky, thank you again.
Sure. Thanks for having me.